Hello there, Vic Benedict here. We're playing Warhammer 40K Space Marine 2, and this is my Angel of Death difficulty guide and walkthrough. We're currently on Operation 2 of 6. It is entitled Severance. So I think I had the prologue mislabeled, so I did fix that in a commentary notation. I remember mentioning it or introducing it as Kotaku or Kodaku something. I think the latter is right. But that's the planet on which the prologue takes place. I wasn't able to find the actual title of the prologue, but doesn't mean one doesn't exist. One might, but I just didn't find one, so I do apologize for introducing that wrong. And this particular chapter, I've gone through. I had to go through multiple times for reasons that weren't the game's fault. But there's still some pretty bad criticisms that I could definitely level against this game. When you are trying to restart the chapter outright, there's a fair amount of tedium that you have to go through. And by fair amount of tedium, I'm giving the game kind of a break because I find it to be more than just a fair amount of it. I find it to be a little bit too intolerable for my liking personally. But you have to go through these story beats, slow walking, walking up to characters, and then not being able to leave their vicinity while dialogue plays out, and just being directed to do different things, which usually involves just standing in one place and trying to walk past a group of characters that are talking to you, but you can't until all the dialogue's played out, and it could take up to, I don't know, it's only like 5 minutes, I think, on average. But to have to do that is kind of ridiculous, and I really wish they hadn't integrated those long narrative sections as a necessity to go through to have to get back into the game. Because if you haven't played the game, before every chapter, you're in the battle barge, and there's story happenings that are going on, and you have to partake in them. It's not like a cutscene, although there are cutscenes that happen during those story moments. Those are skippable, which is nice, but to have to, because I would have capture fails and I would have different things, and I would have to outright start the chapter over, and it's something that I'll have to do continually on this because capture fails are not something that you can get around a lot of times. And it's hard to recover those files that are lost, and most of the time they're irrecoverably lost, or I should say irrevocably. Not sure, but that doesn't sound right either. But this is the chapter that has a mid-level boss fight on it versus a lictor, and I've got a good fight for you coming up. What I would recommend on this particular boss fight. Oh, also, when I'm picking up these items, at this point in the walkthrough, I didn't have the display settings updated so that it has the inventory pickups on the bottom left of the screen. So I think after the lictor boss fight and from thenceforward, I'll have those pickups, and it would have been helpful in situations like this where I'm not able to see what I'm actually picking up because maybe I'm hovering over something else and thinking I'm picking up one thing when I'm actually not picking it up in the first place. So that's a problem. But I will have those inventory pickups coming up for you. I didn't think I knew about them prior to starting this walkthrough, and I went through the game without having them because I didn't think they would. Sometimes too much information is not good. But I think in the situation of inventory pickups for this particular game, being able to, as a player, being able to confirm what I'm picking up, seeing it actually being picked up, and not having to like overly try to pick something up or think I'm picking up something when I'm not, is helpful as a player, and it's also potentially helpful for you as a viewer, so you can see what I'm picking up. I know that you can visually see while I'm hovering over items and trying to pick things up, but like I said a moment or two ago, I was trying to pick up a Guardian relic, and I went through like I think 5 attempts to pick it up, and I just wasn't picking it up because it was he was hovering over something else, I believe, and to be able to confirm it is a lot better. So that will be something to look forward to. So the Lictor boss fight is coming up after, I think, the next fight, and the fight itself is not too bad. I wish there was less run back to it, because sometimes in these games they'll throw you back a fair bit and then make you run up to something and then have to skip a cutscene, or watch it if you want to. But fortunately, they'll let you skip it, which is good. But to have to run back to the boss fight, I think, is actually worse than the boss fight itself, because it's a pretty manageable boss fight. The main things about the boss fight itself is that it does have lackeys at certain points when you reduce it to certain damage thresholds, or maybe I should say HP thresholds would be better. But situations like that can devolve really easily into chaotic situations and potentially big messes for you while you're trying to keep track of a boss that runs away a lot and cloaks itself and appears at random and could come out of the clear blue sky just completely unexpected by you, and you get slashed by him. So I'm not sure what it is with bosses and lackeys. I'm not sure if they're trying to give you those lackeys to help you, regenerate your shields in that way, but I really doubt it. It's usually because of bad taste, I think, is more the cause of putting lackeys in boss fights. I personally don't like them in boss fights. I don't know many people that do like them in boss fights. But I would try to bring the crack grenades into the boss fight, because those are quite helpful on dealing him pretty big damage. If you want to, you can bring the bolt rifle with the grenade launcher on it. And I did make a mistake in the last video of saying that the only way you can pick up the auxiliary component to that weapon, which are the grenades, you can only get those by finding another grenade launcher bolt rifle. That's not the case, so I do apologize about that. The pickups they're random, so you might be picking up some ammo from a cache or just a random pickup and you won't get anything, but then you come across some other packs on the ground, those might give you something. So it is random about giving you those, but I just wasn't expecting the game to be that generous about giving you those back, so I do apologize about that. But you can get pickups for the grenade launcher bolt rifle at random. And I think those are the other. See, I've only gone through the game a single time on the difficulty below this one, so I've never played the original, so I don't have a wealth of experience with the game as I do with other titles that I cover, like Ninja Gaiden or God of War, where I've played all of the games to death. I've not had the same experience with this game, but I think it's okay because I've had to go through this fucking chapter maybe 10 times, so that gives, I think, me plenty of experience. But over here, if you don't have the bolt sniper rifle, probably you want to pick that up. You'll probably have another sniper rifle that you already had access to coming into this, but I would pick this one up if the other sniper rifle runs out of ammunition. That was a pretty bad hit based on greed right there. But the sniper rifle for the boss, I would say, is a bad choice. The grenade launcher is good too, but you have to realize with that weapon, its rate of fire is very slow, and it doesn't have the biggest magazine for its ammunition. So you'll be finding yourself reloading a lot with that weapon and having to deal with a weapon that doesn't fire very fast. That's just a trade-off for it having those grenades as auxiliary tools for you to use with that weapon. So I find that the auto bolt rifle is very good. It has like a midline specs going for it. And in case you're wondering, this is not a type of game also where you upgrade your weapons. The only thing that even comes close to even anything like that is that you do get to select different weapons at the outset of chapters. But they're up to the discretion of the chapter, and you're not always going to be able to pick up I don't think you can ever pick up the bolt rifle with the grenade launcher. Maybe in the later chapters, I'm not sure, but they do. They don't give you access to the entirety of the weapon, weapon selection, but you can outfit yourself with some choices from some basic weapons at the beginning of chapters, and they do progressively unlock the different weapons as you go through the chapters. Okay, actually, we've had several fights since this boss fight, and over here, you might want to stick with the because over to the right there was that cache of weapons. One of those weapons is the grenade launcher if you want that, but there are some pretty good choices here for weapons. I would probably stick with the bolt rifle, the sniper rifle. Sorry. You are going to have some digger tyrannoids coming up over here. I think they're called tunneling tyrannoids or something. But there's a couple of those guys. I'll probably just call them digger tyrannoid, just digger warriors or something, because it just I don't know. I kind of like the sound of that. But they do appear once the fight progresses into about this stage when that first bunch of enemies is spawned. So up over here next to that cache of ammunition, there's some grenades. There's some grenades back here, but specifically by that cache of grenades, the ammo crate up there, there's some crack grenades. So maybe after the fight, pick those up and then bring them into the boss fight. And then over here, if you haven't dispatched these snipers and everybody else in the distance, you'll probably want to find some sort of shelter back here where you can't be picked off while you're trying to deal with these enemies over here, because you will have some digger warriors coming up out of the ground over here. And I'm sorry if that sounds ridiculous, but I just have that reference from Gears of War and that particular weapon called the digger, which I really liked. But it has some interesting parry timings to acquaint yourself with, and I think there's a couple of them as well. And also earlier in when I was trying to pick up that Guardian relic, I forgot to mention that that's the first instance of a Guardian relic in the game that you can pick up. So this is the first opportunity as far as this stage, being able to pick one of those up. And they're helpful. They're not essential by any means, though, but they are helpful to instantly recover yourself when you're downed. And in the course of this chapter, there was only one fight where I was downed a couple of times, and I really did not care. Actually, two. I would say there's a potential for a couple of fights to be really obnoxious. But on one of those fights, I didn't. I just happened to not fall in combat. But there's a couple that fights I find pretty inexcusable for being sloppy, that I definitely wouldn't care if I'd fallen in combat. Yeah, so pick up these crack grenades over here. Now I have two here, but when I get to the boss, and there's some stims too. When I get to the boss, I don't know if I have them still equipped. I seem to have lost them, and I don't know if it was different footage or I don't know, maybe the game just unspawned them from my having them. It's happened before, and I really hate when that kind of shit happens too. But you'll see the boss running along one of the upper branches over there, and it would be nice if you could damage him a little bit and have that be damage that counts from his actual health. But this is it right here. So at the beginning of this fight, he does this kind of scripted thing where he goes from place to place over here, cloaks himself, and you can hit him a little bit, but the main thing is that they do give you enough time, at least in the beginning, to knock him off, and then capitalize on punishments, whether you want to throw crack grenades or do melee combat. Melee combat does him a really good amount of damage, much more than the gunfire. But if you don't shoot him off fast enough, and get him to drop, what's going to happen is you'll see that red flash, that circle, meaning that you need to evade. And if you don't do it properly, that is, if you don't dodge in time, or you don't do your bullet time dodge properly, he will jump on you, and it will go into the scripted thing where you have to waggle the left analog stick and then parry him. But that is definitely not ideal because it will drain both of your shields. So the best thing is to try to get the timing of that down. And it is a pretty big setback to lose your shields like that, though. So some of the trappings of this boss fight would be, once he is on the ground and he's coming after you, try not to get caught into reloads, because then you're caught in that, and you're not going to be able to parry with the proper timing window that you normally be afforded for, because you'll be locked out in having to complete your reload animation. So that's one of the things. And you may have noticed too that pretty early on he will summon the little shitty helpers here, but they are good for regenerating your shields though. So anytime one of them lunges at you with a blue circle, do get your perfect parry to regenerate one of your lost shields if you have any that are lost. But as this does go into the later phases, you'll have the heavier enemies coming in here, and you need to be real careful though about killing these enemies really quickly, or at least withdrawing from any big collections of enemies and trying to get a beat on what he's doing as far as his shiftings from his perches, and when he's about ready to come down and jump on you. Now he is down on the ground. Excuse me. He is down on the ground a fair bit of the time as well. So he doesn't always go into the trees and then try to jump on you. But you will have to watch out for any attacks that are not blue, and that you'll have to dodge with the proper timing there. But have a look around, because there's a good amount of ammunition, some med kits, and there are some more crack grenades as well. With the crack grenades, you definitely need to be careful though, because even if you do pin those on him, he does like to close in the distance and try to attack you constantly. So if those do detonate and you're nearby, you're going to be downed. I believe you're just downed, so you have to get revived by your teammates there. But for that fight, if you do come in with a weapon that you don't like, there's an auto bolt rifle right at the beginning of that fight. Unless you came into this fight with that weapon and you don't like it, there might be something else right before the fight. I think there's a rapid fire weapon that you can use, because they do start you a fair bit away from the fight, from from resets. So when you are doing your run back, there is a collection of ammunition and things like that, a weapon or two maybe, right before the boss fight. So once the fight is cleared though, you're going to come up here now, and for this I would recommend having one of the sniper rifles. There is one over to the right behind some rocks. I believe it's a stalker rifle. Now there's going to be two Tyranid warriors up on this floor over here, so wait till they get near one of the exploding canisters up there. I'm just going to say canisters. I don't know what else to call them sometimes, but one thing that these enemies just really love to do is to throw these barbs at you. They throw these poison spores that go into the ground and they come up as barbs, and they're really, really annoying and difficult to deal with sometimes, because unless you don't plan to rush these guys, you are going to be continually bombarded by these barbs. So I usually don't have much patience for it, and I like to just close in the distance. Now I believe I marked him. If you want to mark enemies, you press up on the D-pad. That will hopefully facilitate and rally your teammates to focus on a particular target. Now coming up over here, we do have some foreshadowing of the Ripper Swarms over here. These are these rat-like enemies that are on the ground. They cannot be killed with melee weapons, so you'll have to shoot them, and you're forced to pick up the Pyro Blaster here. This is a flamethrower weapon. It is the best weapon to deal with these particular enemies over here, they do they do need to be cleared up if they're in your way too much. Any big groupings of them, when they coalesce into like a big group of them and they attack you, it's going to be a red attack. You'll have to avoid it. But coming up, we do have some pretty fights that I really don't like, and they generally involve the ones that I don't like. This one's not too bad, but anytime you deal with the swarms, you'll want to have the flamethrower, and if you don't need to worry about it, because they always put a flamethrower right before every one of these fights with the Ripper swarms. So it's going to. Oh, do you see the white bar up there when I got hit? Some people call that critical damage. I think the game makers call it. What did they call it? I can't remember exactly right now, but something along the lines of I think they call it contested damage, and I think I brought that up in the last video. That white health is permanent, but if you do attack enemies, whether it's like meleeing them or throwing grenades at clusters of enemies, that contested damage can be turned back into health, provided that you're increasing your attacks on enemies. But you don't want to do it to the point where you're so focused on doing that you get damaged even more. And this is also one of the problems over here of the flamethrower. I don't find it the best to deal with the Tyranid warriors, and sometimes you're amidst these Ripper swarms and you've got other enemies to fight, like the warriors, and it's kind of difficult because you need to be clearing up the swarms so that they don't completely overwhelm you from the ground. And the alternative would be to use the secondary weapon to deal with, like Tyranid warriors, if you don't find the flamethrower to be particularly helpful, which I don't too much on that enemy, on the heavier enemies. So it's one of those things where you're switching back and forth between weapons, and in the process of doing that, you're getting damaged by the Ripper swarm. So it can be sort of a compromise, I guess, sometimes, to just keep the anytime there's those swarms around, just probably keep the flamethrower on. That's going to limit you from shooting enemies that are distanced from you, like snipers and such like that. So it's one of those things that I find it hard to try to figure out what exactly is the best approach for this situations, and I find that there really is not the best answer to that question, because you're dealing with two different types of enemies, and one enemy kind of you need to use the flamethrower on one of them, but if it's less ideal on other enemies, then it's one of those things where you're constantly just swapping weapons, getting dealt damage. So it's tricky, to say the least. This is an optional room over here. There's a couple of exploding canisters in this room, so you can get some chain kills probably over here. I have heard that, I don't know too much about this, but when you have your shields already full, right, and then you're going for executions, what does that benefit you? Aside from clearing enemies that are otherwise going to recover and be more problematic, possibly. But I've seen threads online where it does help your. I'm not sure how people put it, but it does help, and it's not like overkill. It does something to increase your stamina or your durability, or I don't know how people put it online, and maybe they were wrong too. I'm not sure. Maybe it is kind of pointless as far as situational, like it helping the matter too much. But clearing enemies and you get iframes too, so that's helpful. If other people are shooting at you, it's nice to go into those executions, even if your shields are full. because your other choice would just be to finish them off with your guns, and that's fine too. But you won't have the benefit of iframes when you're doing that. So it's tricky, and it's one of those things that this I don't think this game really rectified too well. I do wish the combat was a little speedier. I realize we're bogged down with equipment and things like that, but it is pretty slow combat, regardless of what melee weapon you have on. So I do, and I know they had to limit it a little bit, since they're marrying two types of gameplay together, and they didn't want to go down the route of it being too quick. But it works. I'm not saying that it doesn't work. I just wish it had a little bit more swiftness and fluidity to what you were doing. So coming up, we do have what I would classify as some pretty garbage situations over here. If it's the room that I'm thinking about, they're going to be infested by Ripper swarms on the ground, and you're going to have potentially some enemies on higher perches sniping you, as well as those Zoranthrope enemies using their barriers to hit you with those plasma waves that they do, and also to fortify other enemies, make their hits deal you more damage potentially, give them more HP. So it's an enemy that needs to be taken care of. I'm talking about not these enemies here. These are just the regular spore enemies. But you know the ones that I'm talking about. They'll be in the next room as well. But a really good method is to have those crack grenades onto them and then get close to them and lock onto them. And generally, if they're not shifting around too much, I've found that you don't miss too badly all the time. As long as you're locking on to them. That doesn't mean to say though that I haven't missed while being fairly close to one of those enemies, locking on, and it still misses. So that's kind of disappointing. But it's a room that I definitely, had I fallen down and needed to be revived, I wouldn't have cared, because it's one of those chaotic, what I call like a messy sort of situation. The crack grenades are over here. There's two of them. I would pick these up, and then once you drop down, up and to the right there's a med kit, and then over here you're going to be spawning some enemies on this level up here, and then they're going to be coming from the ground too. I think one time when I was going through this, the Ripper swarms weren't spawning. They didn't. It was a glitch where they were hitting me and everything, but it looked from my point of view like nothing was hitting me because they just didn't physically spawn into the game. It was one of my early attempts on it too, and I was trying to figure out what exactly is hitting me here, because from my perspective, nothing was hitting me, but it was actually the game screwing up and not spawning in these enemies. So it looked like I was getting hit by some ambient threat that I couldn't figure out what it was. But it was, unfortunately, the game running, not in the way that they not the way they wanted it to. And that was a shame, because no matter what I did to reset, I remember that it never resolved itself either. So this is definitely not one of those takes, because I do recall having to redo this chapter several times. But here's the area that the Zoranthropes are. Try to run up to them, like I said, lock onto them, and throw the grenade, and then that will down them all the time. Run up to them, execute them, because they're one of the biggest problems. But you are going to be getting damaged ambiently by the Ripper swarms too, when they pull up too much. Pull up, I mean Pool, pull up, and that's, I guess that's just one of the things you have to use the stim kits for, to regain your HP. But remember, the only ways that you get back health in this game, literally your health, are to use the stim kits or melee attack while you're trying to recover your contested damage. That regains your health. And then, of course, the Righteous Fury special attack that you get, that does recover a little bit of your health too. I also think that if you die too many times, they do give you a break and start giving you back some of your health through repeated deaths. But I don't know if that refers to you resetting the checkpoint too many times, like repeatedly resetting from the last checkpoint. I don't think that you get the health back that way. So unfortunately, to get your health back in that sort of situation, you would have to just let yourself get killed over and over. And unfortunately, and this is one of those things about this difficulty that I really can't understand very well, is the fact that you're allowed to get revived multiple times by your teammates, and you could also use a guardian relic as well. So that's potentially like getting picked up 3 or 4 times, depending on the situation. And I just feel that it's a tad on the lenient side as far as the difficulty. I'm not complaining about it, because I appreciate being able to have that luxury in the first place. It's just the fact that I think it could have been the case. I think it could have been handled where you can still use a guardian relic to revive yourself from a death if you have one. But I think it would be a good challenge to maybe go. I mean, I might do it. I might not. This game is really long, and I probably won't. But to go through the game and not get downed, because I don't really get downed that much, and that's going to be contradicted over here where I get downed twice, I think, over here. But again, I don't mind this getting downed over here at all. I think this is really shitty over here, this whole situation. But that comment that I just said, that's not me trying to say that I'm potentially better than that. I don't need those revives, because I do I need them occasionally. But I think that it would be a good challenge, like an additional challenge setting maybe, if you couldn't be revived by your teammates. However, you could be revived with a guardian relic. That could revive you. That might work on another difficulty setting. I don't know. But over here, you are in this perimeter over here, where it's a blue line for the perimeter. You want to stay in this perimeter, because if you leave it, it's going to sacrifice your success and your progress. So stay within the lines of this perimeter if you can help it. It's not something that you'll fail immediately if you leave the perimeter, but I really don't understand why this is so lenient here, where they give you a checkpoint immediately after this first part, because say you were to die here, they would just throw you to the next switch and give you a nice checkpoint. It's a really nice courtesy, actually. But there's a couple of sequences. I'm not saying that that's not bad or anything. I'm just trying to say that there's a section later in the next chapter where you're defending this reactor, and they don't give you any courtesy at all like that. So I think it would have been nice if they would have just continued to be a little bit more courteous with checkpoints. Don't be overly courteous with them. Sometimes they can do that, but also don't be so, such a harsh mentality where you don't give a person a checkpoint, where one is definitely more needed than in a situation like this. But that's not to say I do get downed a couple of times here, and I appreciate that there is a checkpoint here, but it would have been nice in the next chapter if it would have had the same sort of consideration as far as giving you a checkpoint, because I think one is really lacking in a fight that's coming up on the next chapter that I consider to be a very difficult sort of escort situation. It would be the equivalent of these two situations with these two switches here not having any checkpoint. If you died here, then you would have to start way back. And I have done it before where I haven't received a mortal wound like this. But that's just the type of thing that in the next chapter you will have to have that sort of performance. And this is just a god-awful fucking mess, and I really dislike it a lot, because even when you've defended these switches or whatever it's having you do over here, you're still having to deal with these these swarms on the ground, aerial enemies, warriors, and other lesser enemies. And even though you've done what they asked, they want you to clear the room anyway. So I wouldn't worry about using a guardian relic. Sometimes it feels like the game is using them for me. I don't understand what that's all about. One thing that I think that it could be though is since I've alternated, or rather, whatever the reload button is by default, which I think it's X, I put onto R1. So since I have those buttons alternated, maybe I'm pressing the R1 button during those screens, and it's using the relic because it is on the same X. I have no clue. I don't know. I like to think that it's not using it when I don't say to use it. But I don't know. It just feels like that sometimes. It's probably not true. It's probably not using it, against my wishes. But maybe it has some sort of property where it uses it by default, or it auto uses it. I'm not sure. Okay, so after this, you really don't need to worry too much. If you have used a Guardian Relic, there's one coming up to replenish the one you've lost. And then after this, our Righteous Fury special attack that it has throughout the game, like 90% of the time, you're going to have instead the jump pack. And it's going to have a tutorial prompt, which won't be on the screen very long. But if you do need to consult it, just review the footage and you can pause it. But essentially it's a move where you can do dash attacks, and you can literally jump. It's called the jump pack. So you use it to get up onto areas that you ordinarily couldn't get to, and it's not incorporated into the game very frequently. In fact, I wish that I wish that instead of appearing maybe once, I know it appears more than once, but maybe twice is all it appears, like for 2 of the chapters. And I know there's only 6 chapters, but it's such a fun mechanic because you can do aerial shooting combat, and it's quite fun. And it does have a duration on it, so you'll have to just wait a few moments for it to regenerate. But up here, there appears to be a nice Guardian Relic. And then over here, I was looking for the sniper because it's very helpful, but fortunately there's one coming up. So how it works is that once you have used the Y button to do the jump, if you just press the Y button when you're on the ground, he'll do a dash. If you hold the Y button, then he'll go up and he'll do this, and then you can lock onto the ground. And then if you press X, in my case, it's X is probably R1 to do that stomp attack from the air. One thing that I wish it had though was the ability to, if you are in the air and you're doing that stomp attack, I wish you could lock on to executable enemies and just go right into the execution from the air. And I wish you could, because you can't do that. It's just not that finessed into the game. But those situations usually don't come up that often. But the ground pound does damage too. It does area damage on the ground too. So you'll be killing enemies outright if they're just the smaller enemies. But coming up over here, you have a dynamic sequence where you're attaching charges onto certain parts of the geometry over here, and I believe there's 4 charges that you're going to be setting in any particular order you want to. But the entire time that you are doing that, you're tripping spawns, and you're dealing with enemies that are attacking you from different levels of the geometry. Snipers, Xeranthropes, there's a lot of the regular warriors, and it isn't that bad. It's just rather obnoxious at times because just the relentlessness of the spawns. But having the sniper rifle definitely helps out as well. So, and I don't believe you can be interrupted while you are setting the charges onto the different surfaces. Now, you can get damaged, but I don't believe you get interrupted outright. So it's quite nice. And I don't think I've ever died over on any of these sections. I know I didn't have to edit any of this footage over here, so that was good. That means I didn't have to die. But I imagine there are plenty of very nice and considerate checkpoints that the game will give you over here. Sometimes it's one of those things where I wish the checkpoints were a little bit less on situations where you're just navigating the environment, because sometimes I can't get back to places where I was, and then if that happens, it's potentially a chapter reset, particularly if I've lost footage or if I had a capture fail, and then having to do all those story elements just to get back into the chapter. It's very, very frustrating. And I guess it's built into the engine, those story elements at the beginning of the chapters. I don't think if they remastered it wouldn't be a situation because it's built into the engineering of the game type of. That's the feeling I get to it. It wouldn't be possible to just have a revision to it, and because it's part of the game's engine. And I really don't like that in modern games, how that's like that at all. But coming over here, this will be the main area that you're going to be dealing with this section. So we have some Zoranthropes right at the beginning, and then we've got some levels with different locations of enemy spawns, and you'll be tripping spawns, like I said. And I think I didn't mention it, but I'm more of one of those. I've watched a few walkthroughs of people playing this, not in totality of everything because it's like a 9-hour campaign. But I've noticed, I've just come to a noticing of something, is that you're either one of those players that stays back and shoots a lot, or you're the type of player like me that likes to rush enemies more and mix in with enemies and do melee combat more than just hanging back and just doing gunfire all the time. That's not to say that my style of playing is better, because they both have their advantages and disadvantages. One disadvantage of hanging back, though, too much is that when you do need to rush an enemy, like this sort of a situation, although it's not typical, I downed a Zoranthrope with I'm not sure. I think I just brought his HP to 0 with the gun, but he revived. He was in executable status, and I couldn't, or I didn't get down to him fast enough. Fortunately, they don't recover that much of their HP if they recover from execution status. But it was a situation where I could have benefited from having that enemy out of the picture quicker, regaining some of my shields, but it was just because I was too far from him. So be careful of that. Also be careful of getting shot out of the air like that. Very, very frustrating, but that was all my fault. I'm not sure exactly what I thought I was going to be getting away with right there. I think I underestimated his ability to shoot me out of the air there. But it does have the prompts for you. So, and I do like that about this game. And you could even take them off if you want to. So it's to everybody's pleasure or preference, however you like any of your HUD elements to be able to guide you, or if you want to take that off, if you don't want to be guided, if you want different parts of the HUD off, if you want all the HUD off. I don't know how much it accommodates that, but that was fortunate. Did you see I threw a crack grenade on him, and I was close enough where that would have detonated on me and brought me down to the ground, but I was in an iframe execution there, and I was able to get out of it. I definitely would have been down for that. But I do like the HUD elements, at least as far as them directing you to exactly where you need to go at all times, because that is for me is a lot less frustrating than trying to find what I need to do constantly. It's a big game. It can be pretty big for these environments, so I do like having that. But I don't understand the bullet time dodge benefit from like those spores. You can dodge in a bullet time way and get some like you'll get that slowdown where it would normally give you an advantage, but off of like those kind of projectiles and things, you don't get any advantage. I don't understand. Maybe I don't know how that would work, but I wish they would be able to give you some sort of benefit for doing well-timed dodges on off of projectiles. Maybe he could send them back somehow, or do something to offset the problematic nature of enemies spamming projectiles at you, because it is a problem in this game. Like everybody is too keen on projectile spamming you, and then it's more than that too. It's the barbs coming up like right where you are all the time and right underneath you, and giving you big problems and headaches that way, about damaging you a lot that way and impeding your progress. It also slows you down when you're caught up in those barbs. But yes, no real benefit, and actually no benefit to doing well-timed dodges against those projectiles, because nothing happens. You'll get some bullet time slowdown, but that doesn't do anything, Maybe it gives you some visual clarity for a split second, but I don't need any additional visual clarity. I'm okay, where that's concerned. And did I just get knocked out by the trees? Yeah, that was really unfortunate. But we have some ammo back here. We're pretty good. I don't believe we've set all the charges, but it's okay because you're not on a timer here. You can set the charges in any order you want to. So I do like that dynamic nature of this sequence where that's concerned. But it's hard to keep up with the spawns that you're tripping all the time, because it seems like they're so aggressive on this part. But it's not something that you need to worry about overly. Just try to deal with as much as you can that you possibly can deal with, and not just try to rush through it and set the charges, because then you'll just get overrun. Yeah, that would not be good to have, that sort of situation where you're not clearing up enemies on your way. So I think this is potentially our second to last. There might be one more. I think there is one more. And I believe it's right on the bottom. So they're really good at guiding you to exactly where you need to go to set these charges. And then once you have set all four of them, it'll just guide you right back to the beginning, where you entered this area. And then you'll be doing that familiar holding down of the X button to confirm it. And then that's it. And that's a clear chapter. But unfortunately, I had to do that chapter many a time. And it's a good chapter. I'm not complaining about the chapter itself, but having to redo it so many times can definitely be a drag. So that has been the second of the 6 chapters in this campaign, and I will see you in the third. And until then, please remember to take care.